Hello everybody, in this video lecture we will cover chapter 19. I divided chapter 19 into two parts, so those videos are not very long, so this is part number 1. Okay, what are blood vessels? Blood vessels are delivery system of dynamic structures that begins and ends at the heart. If you want to divide blood vessels into major group, we would come up with 3 main groups: arteries, veins, and capillaries. So arteries, so you guys can see here, arteries, so you can follow me. They carry blood away from the heart. So that's a definition for the arteries. Veins carry blood towards the heart. So when we carry blood away from the heart, we can carry it to our organs, or we can carry it to specific organs, such as your lungs. That's why most of the arteries, they carry oxygenated blood, so rich in oxygen. So when you carry blood from your heart to all your organ systems and all your organs, you delivering oxygen and nutrients, right? So most arteries will carry oxygenated blood. Some arteries, the ones that carry blood from your heart to your lungs, actually will carry deoxygenated blood, right? You will carry blood rich in carbon dioxide from your heart to your lungs to get rid of this carbon dioxide. Veins, most of the veins carry deoxygenated blood, but veins that carry blood from your heart to your lungs carry oxygenated blood. And capillaries, they directly serve cellular needs. So capillaries directly serve cellular needs. So on this diagram, you can see the box that represents the heart, and then arteries carry blood away from the heart, and they became smaller and smaller in diameter, became arterioles, and then capillaries. And this is where we have exchange between blood and your tissues. Then capillaries unite, and they make small venules, right? So small venules, and venules became larger and larger vessels, and then so first small veins, then large veins, and then back to the heart. Right. Also, look at the arterial system here. You can see that the largest arteries are elastic arteries. Then smaller arteries are muscular arteries. And we already talked about arterioles that are small arteries. So arteries and veins, they have a similar histological structure. They have 3 tunics, right? So here's tunica intima, tunica media, and tunica externa. And then we have lumen, and lumen is central blood-containing space. And capillaries, they do not have those tunics. They're just made of endothelium, right, with the basal lamina under it. So on this diagram, you can see the structure of walls of artery and vein, and you can also see capillaries. So you see this, what do we have inside? That's a lumen. So here's the lumen of a vein, over here, lumen of artery, and then we have a wall. That's a wall of the artery or wall of a vein, and we have these 3 tunics. But when you look at capillaries on the bottom, it's endothelium, right? So here, that's the cells. Those are endothelial cells, and this covering is basement membrane. So tunica intima, endothelium that lines the lumen of all vessels. Tunica media, made of smooth muscles and sheets of elastic tissue. So it's elastin that makes these sheets. And the tunica externa, sometimes we call it tunica adventitia. This tunica is made of collagen fibers that protect and reinforce the walls of the blood vessels. This diagram shows us relative amount of endothelium, elastic tissue, smooth muscle, and tunica externa or adventitia, so those collagenous fibers. So this is just for your reference. You don't need to memorize it. Just make sure you understand that different arteries, when we're talking about elastic artery or muscular artery, right, or arterioles, or when we're talking about large veins or small venules, they have kind of like different proportion of endothelium, elastic tissue, smooth muscles, and fibrous tissue. So elastic arteries. Another name for elastic arteries is conducting arteries. Those are the biggest. Large, thick-walled arteries with elastin in all three tunics. If you want a good example of elastic artery, that would be aorta, because aorta is the largest blood vessel in your body and aortic major branches. Elastic arteries, they have large lumen that offers low resistance, and they are pressure reservoir because they can expand and recoil when the blood is ejected from the heart. Muscular arteries and arterioles. So another name for muscular arteries is distributing arteries, and they are distal to elastic arteries. They are smaller, and they deliver blood to body organs. They have thick tunica media with smooth muscles, so that's why we call them muscular arteries. They active in vasoconstriction. That means they can constrict and dilate, and by doing it, your body can regulate amount of blood that is delivered to a specific part of the body. Arterioles are the smallest arteries, and they lead to capillary beds. Arterioles are also active in vasodilation and vasoconstriction, the same as muscular arteries. Capillaries. Capillaries are microscopic blood vessels, walls of thin tunica intima. Sometimes walls are 1 cell thick. Size of the lumen is very small. Sometimes it just single red blood cells can pass through the lumen at a time. We have capillaries pretty much everywhere in our body, with exception of cartilage, epithelium, and cornea and lens of eye. Function of capillaries are gas exchange, nutrient exchange, pick up waste product, and also exchange of hormones. We have three structural types of capillaries. We have continuous capillaries, fenestrated, and sinusoidal, or we call them sinusoids. So three types of capillaries. Continuous capillaries. Those are the most abundant. They abundant in your skin and your muscles. We have endothelial cells, the same as for any capillaries, and we have tight junctions between these cells. We do have what we call intercellular clefts, and intercellular cleft, you can see it right here, for example, right? Or right here. So those are the gaps between cells that make a wall of the capillaries, and it allows fluids and small molecules to move in and out of the capillaries. So those are continuous capillaries, the most abundant. Next type of capillaries are fenestrated capillaries. And if you compare two pictures, Now you can see these pores over here, right? So those pores are called fenestrations. So, endothelial cells contain pores or fenestrations. And because they have those pores, they're more permeable than continuous capillaries. If they are more permeable, then their function would be absorption or filtration. Because during absorption or filtration, we need molecules to move in and out, right? And those molecules might be bigger molecules. So where would we find it? Well, anywhere where we need absorption and filtration. We need absorption in the small intestine, right? This is where we need absorption. We also need kind of like maybe not absorption, but ability for larger molecules to pass through these fenestrations. And that's why we find those capillaries in endocrine glands. Think about your endocrine glands. They synthesize and secrete endocrine hormones. Some of those hormones are pretty large molecules, either amino acid or even proteins, right? So that's why we would like to have a larger pores for these hormones to be able to move from the from your glands to the blood vessels, right? So here, the endocrine hormones would move inside these capillaries. And where we need filtration, right? Well, we need filtration in the kidneys. Oh, it gets a little bit messy here, right? The last type of capillaries are sinusoidal capillaries, right? And if you look at sinusoidal capillaries, they also have these pores. So they also have fenestrations. But what they have less of tight junctions. That means cells are not always connected to each other. Like over here, look, that's a tight junction. And so we have big openings over here that is called intercellular cleft. Inter means between cells. So we have gaps between cells, not so many tight junctions, and we still have fenestration. And this allows even bigger molecules, like really large molecules, to pass between blood and tissues, and not only large molecules, even blood cells. So now even a blood cell, so here look, it's really big, but the blood cell will be able to pass through these openings, right, through these clefts or fenestrations. And we would find it in the liver, in the bone marrow, and in the spleen. So why would we need it in the liver and in the spleen? Because in the liver and in the spleen, this is where we get rid of old, damaged, fragile red blood cells. So red blood cells from the capillaries need to move to the liver, to your spleen, and we would have macrophages that would get rid of those blood cells. So we do need large pores in the liver and the spleen. And why would we have sinusoidal capillaries in the bone marrow? And this is where we form blood cells. So when blood cells are formed, they move inside capillaries to be delivered through your vascular system, cardiovascular system. Capillary beds. Capillary beds are interwoven networks of capillaries that form the microcirculation between arterioles and venules. Capillary beds consist of two types of vessel. And one vessel, I like this name. It's called met-arteriole. So it's like arteriole, and we just add the prefix met. So we have met-arterioles, and they directly connect terminal arteriole and post-capillary venule. And we have true capillaries right there. So let's go ahead and look at the picture on the next slide. So here's our capillary beds, right? So here's a capillary bed over here. And this blood vessel, this is arteriole, terminal arteriole. And this blood vessel over here is called small venule, right? So you see this blood vessel that directly connects the arteriole with the venule. This is called metarteriole. And everything else, all the rest of the blood vessels here, those are true capillaries. And what we have is sphincters here. So here's the sphincter, here's the sphincter, right? Here's should be more over here, right? Yeah, right there, over here. And those sphincters are smooth muscle, right? Circular smooth muscle. And when they contract, we constrict those true capillaries, and blood cannot flow inside this capillary bed. And then the blood flow directly through the metarteriole. And why would we need it in our body? We need it to regulate the amount of blood delivered to your organs, right? Venules. Venules form when capillary beds unite. Venules are very porous and allow fluids and white blood cells move into tissue. Larger venules have one or two layers of smooth muscle cells. Then we have veins. So veins are bigger than venules. So veins are formed when venules converge. And they have thinner walls, larger lumen compared with the corresponding arteries. And blood pressure is lower than in arteries. So this is photomicrograph of histological slide, and you can see artery and a vein. And you can see the difference. Arteries, they have like really thick wall, nice, almost round lumen. And the vein over here has a thin wall, right? The lumen is not that nicely defined. So obviously we can see the difference between vein and artery. So adaptations. Adaptation in veins that ensure return of blood to the heart. Because we don't have this pumping action of the heart anymore to pump blood through the veins. That's why veins, they have larger diameter lumens that larger diameter that offer little resistance. Veins also have valves, and valves prevent backflow of blood. Especially those valves are abundant in veins of the limbs, your arms and legs. We also have what we call venous sinuses, and those are flat veins. And example would be coronary sinus or dural sinus of the brain. Vascular anastomosis. Anastomosis are connections of blood vessels. And what they do, they provide alternative pathway. So if over here, if you look at this diagram, let's say if we have some arteriole and we have some small venule, right, and we're forming this capillary bed over here. So let's say if we have occlusion, some vascular occlusion over here, some blockage of this blood vessel, we still have anastomosis that allow us to move blood from the artery to the vein. So the common anastomosis are common at joints, abdominal organs, brain, and heart. Especially, we have a lot of venous anastomosis. Okay, that was our last slide. Remember, you guys also have to watch part 2 of this chapter. Bye.